In today's video, I'm going to share something I've never spoken about before. It's a story that changed who I was forever. Some parts are hard to talk about, but I think that's exactly why they need to be told. So, if you're watching this right now, thank you. Please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because stories like this are how we learn about others and about ourselves. Now let's begin. It started on a day that felt too quiet to be real. A summer afternoon when the air was heavy with salt, and the sound of the waves drowned out everything else. I told myself it was just another day, that I needed the break, the calm. But deep down, I knew something inside me was unraveling. Leonard and I had come to the beach to escape the noise of home. The silence that had filled the house for months was somehow louder than any argument we'd ever had. He wasn't a stranger to me, not really, but the distance between us had become impossible to cross. When he offered to help me set up the umbrella, I noticed his hands shaking slightly. Not from the wind, not from exhaustion, but from something heavier. Something like guilt. We didn't speak for a long time. The sea stretched endlessly before us, but all I could feel was the weight of things unsaid. There are silences that comfort you, and there are silences that suffocate you. This one was the latter. Leonard kept looking out toward the horizon. Every time the light shifted, I caught the reflection of something in his eyes. Something like regret, but deeper. And I think I understood it, because I was carrying my own. We had both made choices, small ones seemingly harmless, that had led us to this moment. Choices to stay quiet when we should have spoken, to hide pain instead of confronting it. I wanted to reach out, to tell him it was all right to speak. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. The words got lost somewhere between fear and pride. After that day, everything changed. I wish I could tell you it was sudden, that there was one single moment where the world shifted. But it wasn't like that. It was slow, creeping, invisible. It was in the way Leonard avoided my eyes when he came home. It was in how I pretended not to notice. It was in the long nights when I lay awake replaying every conversation, every look, every unfinished sentence. Guilt has a strange way of growing roots in your mind. You think you've buried it, but it keeps finding its way back to the surface. Phoenix, my husband, had grown distant long before that summer. He was always busy, always tired, always almost home. When he was there, he wasn't really there. And somehow, that made everything worse. I started noticing how Leonard mirrored that same detachment. How he'd learned silence from his father. And I hated that I'd let it happen. So I tried to fix things the only way I knew how, pretending. I cooked dinner. I smiled when I didn't feel like it. I laughed at jokes that weren't funny. But every small act of pretending only pushed the truth further away. A week later, we went back to the beach. I told myself it was for peace of mind. That maybe if we returned to the place where everything had cracked, we could somehow repair it. But healing doesn't come from pretending things never broke. It comes from facing why they did. The sun was bright that day, almost too bright. We sat in silence again, but this time the air felt heavier. I wanted to tell him how sorry I was, for being distant, for letting the silence win. But I didn't know how to start. Leonard finally spoke first. Do you ever think things can go back to how they were? His voice was low, steady, but there was a tremor in it. I didn't answer right away. Because the truth was, I didn't believe they could. Sometimes life doesn't explode, it erodes. A piece at a time until you wake up and realize there's nothing left of what used to be. That afternoon, I saw the cracks that had always been there. In him. In me. In the fragile bond we'd both been pretending still held. He told me he felt invisible. That no matter how hard he tried, no one really saw him. And hearing that broke something inside me, because I knew that feeling too well. We stood there by the water. Two people tied by guilt, grief, and 1,000 unspoken apologies. I told him, "You're not invisible." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. The drive home was silent. I could hear the hum of the tires, the faint sound of the radio, and the storm inside my head. I kept thinking about how easy it is to lose someone even when they're sitting right beside you. And how sometimes the hardest thing isn't letting go, it's admitting you already have. When we reached the driveway, neither of us moved. Leonard finally whispered, "Mom, are we okay?" And that's when I realized, this story wasn't about blame. It was about forgiveness. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen long after midnight, listening to the house breathe. Every shadow felt alive, every sound heavier than it should have been. I thought about all the choices I'd made, about love, about silence, about how easily people drift apart. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel angry. I just felt tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of carrying the guilt alone. So I decided to speak. To tell the truth, even if it broke me a little more. The next morning, I found Leonard sitting outside, staring at the sunrise. He didn't look at me when I sat beside him. "I'm sorry," I said simply. "For what?" he asked, still watching the horizon. "For not being there when you needed someone to listen." He was quiet for a while before finally replying, "I'm sorry too. For not asking for help." It wasn't dramatic. There were no tears or grand speeches. Just two people learning how to start over, one honest sentence at a time. Healing isn't a straight path. It's not a single moment of clarity. It's a slow climb out of the darkness, step by painful step. We went to therapy together. We learned how to talk again. How to listen without assuming, how to see without judging. There were days we fell back into silence. Days where the guilt came creeping back like an old friend. But there were also days filled with laughter, warmth, and forgiveness. And those days were enough. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. Silence doesn't protect you. It only deepens the wound. Speak, even when your voice shakes. Listen even when it hurts. And forgive, not because someone deserves it, but because you deserve peace. That day on the beach didn't break us. It revealed how broken we already were. And that realization, painful as it was, became the start of something new. If you've made it this far into the story, thank you. I know it wasn't easy to hear, but maybe that's why it matters. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or trapped in silence, I hope you find the courage to speak. And if this story touched you in any way, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps me keep telling stories that remind us we are never truly alone, even in our darkest moments.